author called Rob Hopkins. So Rob worked in permaculture in Kinsale in the southwest of Ireland for about 10 years. And he gave his students a task. And the task was, how could they make Kinsale oil and gas free within 10 years? How could they transition that town? And when he moved back to Totnes in the UK, he started and co-founded what's called the Transition Town Movement. And that has now grown. And it's in 50 countries with thousands of community projects where people all over the world are taking sustainability into their own hands. Now, Rob is often also an author, and one of his books is called From What Is to What If. From What Is to What If. And in that book, he invites us to use imagination and longing to lean into the future that we want to see in order to be good ancestors, among other things. So a couple of years ago, I took that question, that what if question, and I applied it to yoga teaching and to yoga teachers. And I came up with, well, I'll give you some of the things that I came up with on my list. And I invite you in your own time to add to it. So one of my what ifs was, what if we didn't have to be the one at the top of the room with all the answers? What if we could teach our students to sense, feel, adapt, and engage in their own questions as a really integral part of learning of any yoga class? What if we could continue to grow and thrive alongside our students for the whole longevity of our yoga careers? What if yoga teaching was really sustainable? And I mean that with a great deal of respect. What if it was a profession that allowed you to get a mortgage, have health insurance, have a pension, send the kids to university? What if it didn't need a real job in the form of a partner or another, or a second job in order to be really, truly sustainable? As I looked forward, I also asked myself, what if yoga teachers were this vital, humanizing force as we move into a world that has more acceleration, more technology, more screens, and what is in essence a dehumanization of the process of being human? So what if our job was to help people stay connected and engaged and vital in their own bodies? And what if that job became absolutely necessary for the future of humanity? And I really, truly believe that the legions of yoga teachers the world over, whether they're teaching a tiny little class way up somewhere in Alaska where they're cut off from the rest of the world half of the year, or a big class in a studio in LA, or a small class in a permaculture community somewhere in Ecuador, the role that yoga teachers play is vital. And we saw that in the pandemic. We saw how underestimated yoga teachers were in terms of people's mental health, their professional health, their physical health, and their spiritual health. So when I look forward to the future of yoga, one of the things that happens when you ask a what if question is, if that is the future we're leaning into, and that's what the longing and the desire is, what are the steps that we take so that that future becomes real? And when I looked at the things that I have been offering over the last 25 years, one of the key elements that I landed on again and again was beginners. How do we start with beginners? How do we grow a foundation? And how does that foundation with our beginners then lead to thriving rather than surviving in terms of workshops and retreats and private one-to-ones and maybe teacher training? And I don't mean thriving and surviving only in a financial sense. I mean in the joy of continuing to commit to this thing that we love and hold so dear. And I don't think I know any yoga teacher that got into it for the money. Most of them are so service oriented, ultimately service oriented. And that is the thing that helps yoga teachers that stay the course of a career, the course of a lifetime. It is that service orientation that those of us that choose to serve come back to again and again and again. And then the dream is that there is a very clear acknowledgement and remuneration of that service so that we go beyond the serve role and that it is, as I said earlier, sustainable. Can it be a sustainable career? So when I looked at beginners, I looked at what had made sense in my classes. I looked at what was practical, what had kept students coming back year after year, and in many cases, decade after decade. I looked at what was bite size, what was accessible, and I looked at it in the framework of a larger teaching model, which is the model that has helped many teachers remain sustainable. And then I spent about 8 months full-time writing to put together what is arguably the most longest handout in the history of handouts, i.e., it's a book. And that book was then edited, copy edited, illustrated. So quite a lot of work has gone into the thought process of putting this together. And I have to say, I'm really proud of it. I'm really proud of it as not only an offering, but a long-term service to our community and to the future of our community if we want to be good yoga ancestors.